Hey guys, Rob Heldorn, Arianation here. Just wanted to welcome you guys to this week's video. It's a little bit different to what I was planning on doing today. Given this whole coronavirus that's going around the world at the moment, I did actually have another video that I was going to share, but I've had, especially in the last week, I've had a lot of my existing clients as well as a few others that have come to me and said, look, we just need to know how to handle this from a telco point of view. What can we do? What can we cancel? We've had to lay a few people off, unfortunately. What are our options? So I wanted to put this video together and just to show you there's 3 or 4 main areas where you need to consider at the moment as to what your actions need to be as far as, or what your options are really when it comes to the coronavirus and everybody working from home, and just understanding, getting a little bit of perspective on the whole thing. So we'll just dive straight in. So those 4 options, the 4 areas that we need to look at are mobile, NBN versus 4G, phone systems, and video conferencing. Now, there's a few different things that we need to go through for each. So if we start with mobile. Mobile is something that I've been in the fortunate position with a lot of my clients where the way I set up their plans is very much where nobody's actually contracted on the plan itself. If they take a phone with the plan, then there'll be a contract on the phone component, but the actual plans themselves aren't actually contracted at all. So that gives us the flexibility where if they've been in a position where they've unfortunately had to lay some people off, we can actually just go in and disconnect whatever plans we need to wipe out for this time period. And then when everything picks back up again, we can just go out and connect up some new numbers. So yes, they do lose their numbers in that instance, but at least they have the ability there to disconnect the old numbers, save themselves a bit of money in the meantime, and then go back in and connect up new numbers when the time comes. So that's been very helpful for them, because the other option, and I've seen it a number of times in the last week or two, is where people have come to me and said, look, can you have a look at what we can do? And the person that they've been dealing with has put them on these 24-month SIM-only contracts, which is another video altogether. I'm not going to get into that too much now, but they do lock you in. And thankfully, the telco companies have been a little bit more understanding lately, but it is a case-by-case basis with that, where you may be able to get out of it if you get somebody that's empathetic and understanding on the other end of the phone. But otherwise, there have been circumstances I've seen where the client is actually locked into those contracts, and unfortunately there's just not too much that they can do about it. They may be able to defer payments or what have you, but they haven't managed to get out of the contract itself. So look, provided the person you're dealing with hasn't locked you into one of these 24-month contracts on a SIM-only plan, which they shouldn't have if they were genuinely doing the right thing by you. They shouldn't have done that, but so hopefully they haven't. Hopefully they've done the right thing by you, and if you are in the unfortunate position where you need to look at laying some staff off, at least in the short term, then hopefully you're able to cancel off whatever services you don't need and continue on running with the ones that you do. So that's mobile, right? NBN versus 4G. This is an interesting one, because when I was looking at putting this video together, I'm thinking, okay, how can I bring value to the audience? How can I, make sure that the people that I'm talking to are actually getting value out of this? Because it's not so much about, look, yes, I can sell you a 4G connection. Yes, I can sell you an NBN connection, but it's more about how to understand what's actually happening with the networks at the moment with the NBN, because of this whole coronavirus and everybody working from home. And what I found with it is that a lot of NBN connections right now, and even the 4G, but NBN in particular, seem to be a lot slower than what they are normally. A lot of you have probably noticed that with your own connections, right? Now, the reason for that is congestion. Now, people like myself who work from home, we've thought it was great for the last however many months, years, that everybody else during the day goes out to work and they're in their offices and they've got their 100 meg and 400 meg connections and away they go. And they leave the NBN basically vacant, very, very little congestion during the day, so we get really good speeds, right? What's happened now is, because everybody's working from home and all the school kids, or a lot of the school kids are staying home as well, is everybody's on the internet, everybody's on the NBN during the day. And that's causing the congestion issues. The speeds are just going like that. It's, and even on my service, I've noticed it. So if you are having issues with your speed on NBN, it's something that just using a little bit of perspective, and again, it's something that I've done myself because I've noticed that my speed has dropped a bit. But look, I'm by no means an expert on the whole coronavirus matter, but the feeling that I get, and if you look at the stats in WA in particular over the last few days, I think it's the last 4 or 5 days, the number of new cases has declined every single day, which is obviously a positive. It looks like it's on the right track. So, if that continues, hopefully we're going to be in a position in maybe the next 2 weeks to a month, where we can actually start getting people back to work and working from their offices rather than working from home. So yes, it's going to be a little bit painful for the time being, whether you're on NBN or 4G. What I will say about 4G is many times if you're in a good area and you can get very good data speeds, a lot of the times you're actually going to have better speed on 4G than what you will on NBN. The only thing you need to be careful of with that is making sure that essentially that you're not going to go over your data allowance. Now, the telco companies right now have basically said, look, we'll put up the data allowances at the moment to help out. We're going to do this and that, and that. Some of these plans say that they have unlimited data. There's no excess charge if you go over your data allowance, which is true, right? In a lot of circumstances. But what they do instead is that they throttle the speed back to 1.5 meg once you hit your data allowance. So, how much you're actually going to get done on 1.5 meg. But it's just about understanding what your requirements are, right? If you're going to sit there and use this period when you're working from home to sit there and stream Netflix all day, you're probably not going to want to do that on 4G because you're going to blow through your allowance like that. If you're actually sitting there doing your work and you may not be in a position where you actually need that much data, and you may be able to make your data last a lot longer and still get those better speeds on 4G. So it's just about understanding how much you're using at the moment. And what your actual usage is over that period. And as I say, all of the mobile networks at the moment have offered increased data. You'll still get your your notifications when you're getting close to or hitting your data allowance. And then from there, it's just a case of, do I have enough data to cover this? Or, if not, I've got the NBN connection or as a backup at home. But as I say, look, it may be something that does go on for a few more months, but hopefully it's, particularly in WA, hopefully it's something that in the next couple of weeks to a month, hopefully it dissipates to the point where people can actually start going back to work. But I think just use a little bit of perspective at this stage and just understand that, yes, okay, there's going to be congestion, whether you're on 4G or NBN, you're going to have congestion either way. Look, my mobile's on Telstra. I almost never have a dropout, and I've actually had a couple of dropouts here in Perth in the last week. So, it's going to happen. So just bear with it. The mobile networks and the NBN are genuinely doing the best they can to cope with the extra congestion. There's only so much they can do, and we've all seen the issues that the NBN has had since its inception. But at a time like this, you do just need to use a little bit of empathy and a little bit of perspective there, and understand that speeds are going to be affected at this stage. So do what you can, but that's what I would suggest with that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is video conferencing. Now, I'm by no means an expert on video conferencing. It's not really my area, but I have had a few people that have spoken to me recently and said, look, everybody's working from home. I've got one client in particular, south of Perth, that they're quite a large not-for-profit, and they have a bunch of group homes around the place, and they actually have the carers that will typically go out to the group homes to check on the residents and make sure they're doing okay and all of that. And what they've said is that they, to limit with the social distancing and all of that, limit that interaction, they're looking at, can we have a video conferencing system that will allow us to check in on our residents, to do that. So that was a discussion I was having with them. But even outside of that, I have had a few clients that have the same sort of thing. Look, we're working from home, we want to set up video conferencing, and away we go. Like, what I would suggest on that, and what my own personal experience, and as I say, I'm by no means an expert on video conferencing, but the one that I have been using myself is actually Zoom. Most people probably heard about it. I don't know the ins and outs of it around, as a business, whether there's paid versions or whether, I haven't even looked into that. It's not, as I say, it's not my area of expertise, but it's something that I have suggested to my clients to check out. Check out Zoom. Skype's obviously there as well as another option, but Zoom seems to be the main one at the moment. And I was actually in a District 32 meeting on Zoom a week or so back, and they were able to do breakout rooms, so we could go into little one-to-one meetings outside of the main room, and then we could all come back in, and it actually seemed to work really, really well. So again, just have a look at it. That it may suit your business and your requirements, but there are a lot of video conferencing experts out there that could talk you through that if that isn't a solution. There's mountains of different options out there, and you know, one of the ones that I've seen lately, you can get ones that it's anything up to you know, $50 or $100 to go and buy a webcam, versus you can get these full-blown video conferencing systems that are going to cost you, you know, 5, 6, 7, 10 grand. So it's just a case of understanding what your requirements are, and you know, if you're going to go to the expense of putting one of these systems in, my suggestion with that is just make sure it's something that you're actually going to use after the fact. Even if this does go on for another 3 to 6 months, you know, are you going to use it after that, or are you investing, you know, 7 or 8 grand in a system that you're going to use for that period of time, and then it's just going to sit there and never get touched again? So just to, you know, you've got to do what you've got to do to get through it at the moment, but you know, if you can run with Zoom, it does seem like a very good tool. So that's typically what I'm suggesting to my clients at the moment as a starting point. Check out Zoom, and whether or not you actually that's going to work for you. If it does, great. You know, there's a free version, away you go. If it doesn't, then there are plenty of other options. But as I say, I'm probably not the best person to speak about it, but it is something worth looking at. And the other thing is the phone systems. Now, this ties in a little bit with the NBN and 4G discussion, because with the issues around bandwidth and data speeds and what have you, if you do have very poor NBN speed or very poor 4G speed, your internet connection while you're working from home is not great, then you are somewhat limited on these options. But what I would say is, if you're looking at working from home and your internet's running, say 20 megs overkill, but let's say 20 meg download, 5 meg upload. You know, if we assume that you're using that as a starting point, what I've said to my clients is, you can actually, and I've got one client, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a sec, but I've got one client in particular, and they said to me, look, we've got this phone system, they've got about 10 or 12 people in the office, we've sent everybody home to, you know, to work for the next week or month or whatever it's going to be, but we don't really like the idea of just diverting everything to our mobiles, because it's outside of the system, it's, you know, transferring and then transferring back and conferencing in. It can be done, but it's clunky, and I said to them, look, the phone system you have is a hosted VoIP system. You can essentially take your phone off your desk in the office, plug it into your modem when you get home, and operate your phone system like you're still in the office. You can. That's what's so great about these hosted VoIP systems. You've got the ability to do that, where you can literally plug it into your modem. Any internet connection, doesn't even have to be an NBN modem. It can be a 4G connection. It can be any internet connection, as long as it's stable enough and you'll be able to actually operate it. So what these guys have done is, everybody's taken their phone off their desk, they've taken it home, they've plugged it into their own modem, and now when calls are coming in, the receptionist is working from home, she's got a desk set up at home with a computer and blah, 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 and her phone. If a call comes in, they go through the same IVR, press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for that, whatever, you know. Calls come through to reception, she can then have a look on her phone, she can tell who's available. She can see, okay, yes, this person's, you know, I need to transfer this call to Brad. Okay, here you go, Brad, here's your call, blah, blah, blah. She's operating the phone system exactly the same way from home as she is in the office. There's no difference whatsoever, other than the fact that she's sitting at a different desk at her house versus sitting at the desk in the city. So, you know, you can do so much with these systems, and you don't actually have to go to the expense of, you know, looking at, what do I do with these, you know, setting up diversions, and, you know, are there going to be costs involved in that, or do you want to have everything going through to a mobile? If so, what mobile? And then if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 calls coming through at once, how does it, you know, so businesses are still operating, right? There are a lot of businesses, and I do have empathy for the businesses that are struggling at the moment. There are a lot that are really struggling, and again, I've had some of my clients that are in this position, and they've unfortunately had to lay people off, or they're looking at, you know, not having much business, if any, coming through for the next period of time until this all sort of calms down. And you know, I feel for those people, and I'm definitely empathetic towards that. But at the same time, there are a lot of businesses that are still operating almost as at the same scale as what they were previously. You know, and there's actually some that are actually being more successful at this stage, which, you know, give or take, right? But
it's something that you, from a phone system point of view, again, if you've got the right phone system set up, and there's other phone systems that don't give you, if you've got an on-premise phone system, it is a lot more restrictive, which is part of the reason I don't sell it, because of the restrictions that you've got on that. But you've got, there are other options if you do have an on-premise phone system. But ideally, if you've got a VoIP phone system or a hosted VoIP phone system, and you're able to pick up the phone, take it home, plug it in, you'll have connection, right? And look, I did this myself when I'm originally from Sydney, right? And I moved to Perth about 4.5 years ago, and was working for a company based in Sydney at the time. And when I left Sydney, I was still working for them, and they said set up over in Perth. So quite literally, all I did was I picked up my phone off my desk in Sydney, plugged it in when I got to Perth, and people were still calling me on my 02. Well, I can't remember what the number was now, but my Sydney number, and the calls were landing on my phone in Perth in my home office. So you can literally plug these things in anywhere you have an internet connection. You can actually plug them in anywhere overseas, as long as you've got an internet connection and the right type of setup, they will work, right? So that's ideally. Have a look at it. There are companies that are actually still transitioning to these systems. I've been surprised. I thought it was going to be that a lot of companies were going to just shut down and stop spending money at this stage. In the last week or two, I've actually had quite a few orders for new phone systems come through, which has been, it's been great, but it obviously proves that businesses are still operating, and they're still looking at, ways of increasing efficiencies and, reducing costs and everything at this stage. So there are actually options out there, and they will give you greater productivity and greater efficiencies and, more flexibility than what the old systems are. So through this period it may help, but again, same as video conferencing, I'm not telling anybody go and spend 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 grand on a new phone system if it's something that you're looking at. Well, I only really need it to get me through for the next 2 months, 3 months, however long this thing lasts, right? If it's something that, if you genuinely need a new phone system, great, but I don't see it as a short-term fix, and that's not what I want people to do, is go out and just buy these new phone systems just because it's going to be a short-term fix. But then again, that works for some people, so it's up to you, right? It's your business, you do what you want. But look, they're just the 4 areas I wanted to go through with you today. As I say, I haven't really said too much about the coronavirus, and I did have another video that I was going to be putting out today on a completely different topic, but I decided that at the moment, especially with the way that the world is going and the amount of inquiries that I've had coming through, I thought it was important that I actually at least address this. And put this out there so that you actually have some understanding of where you need to look, and look, talk to your account manager, talk to your salesperson, that whoever you've got looking after your account at the moment, and just have the discussion with them. And on the mobile side, am I in a contract? What are my options? NBN versus 4G, how much data am I going to use? Can I get away with being on a 4G device or hotspotting from my phone, which is another thing that a lot of people are doing at the moment because of the amount of data built into the phone plans now. You can get away with that in a lot of circumstances, and just understanding what your options are around that. Video conferencing, as I said, check out Zoom. It may well be suitable, and it's a free option. I'm sure they have a paid version, right? But I've used the free one, and it works brilliantly. And then phone systems. Again, have a look at your options, talk to your account executive or your sales rep that looks after your account, and just understand what your options are. But typically, if you're running a hosted VoIP system, I dare say you should be able to just take that phone home, plug it into your internet connection at home, and away you go. You can pretty well operate that phone system exactly the same way from home as you do while you're in the office. So look, that's just what I wanted to go through at this stage. If you do have any questions or comments, as always, I'm always looking for feedback, always happy to have the discussion. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you feel like there is value in it, please subscribe and like the video. I am trying to get up to the 100 subscribers at the moment, because that will allow YouTube will open up a new URL for me to actually use as an arianation URL rather than the encrypted random one that they give. So share this out, and yeah, if we can get up to that 100 subscribers this week would be amazing. I'd really appreciate that. But any questions, by all means, put them in the comments below. Any feedback, any comments, I'd love to hear them. And look, just stay safe. The social distancing, try and stay home as much as possible. And as I say, hopefully this, particularly in Perth, and I haven't really looked too much at what the other states are doing, but particularly in Perth the last 4 or 5 days, as I say,
the new case rate has been declining each day, which is positive. So hopefully that trend continues and we can all start getting back to some sort of normal life in the not too distant future. In the meantime, stay safe, stay positive, and thank you for your time. Cheers.